Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 10th, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, still trying to remember to say 2025. I'm sharing my screen and moderating the discussion, and also present are Ralph Kohler and Simo Helston. We're going to continue where we picked off last week, which is this issue, Refine Field Descriptions. The issue ID is 3370326. And let's open a test Drupal site. It's a fresh install of Umami. If I go to content types and manage fields, if I create a new field, I think the most annoying example that that I've run into is the reference field. Um, it's these descriptions that we're talking about. And in this case, all of the descriptions are the same, which is very unhelpful. Um, but of course, I go back, each one of these has some description text here and then description text when you choose the given options. Ralph, Simo, I don't think I need to remind you of any of that, do I? That's all for the sake of the recording.
All good.
Okay, so as I said, we were looking at this at the very end of last week's meeting, and um, I think we're working in this column C for the recommended text, and we've gone through um, plain text and formatted text, haven't we?
Formatted text halfway. We stopped.
Okay, yes, these short text is filled in, and we have to move on to long text. So let me switch back to sample site so we can see it in context. And we're now looking at formatted text, the options here. And so these are the current bullet points in context. Um, and I think we're generally favoring these shorter descriptions rather than ideal for longer texts and so forth. Um,
Yeah. Column B is basically a mirror of column D, where I've worked on everything as an initial draft, and we've discussed that and then shortened or dropped things out. For example, like the allows rich text formatting HTML. Last week we thought it was sort of not necessary.
That's right. We left
Yeah.
that out for short text because it's not something that differentiates between the options you're choosing now, it's something you've already chosen.
But
So,
we also added the up to the character count.
right.
Just one thought. I wonder, would it make sense to remove the parentheses? Because I'm usually not much of a fan of parentheses in that kind of microcopy.
I mean, I think it's useful because 16,000 is more than enough for most use cases. It's
No, I meant keep the information but remove the parentheses.
I understand.
Okay,
And
I thought you thought I would recommend removing the information again.
no, I'm not thinking of removing. I'm just thinking that the important thing is fixed maximum length. And the detail that it has this maximum is unimportant to most users, so I'd rather put it in parentheses so that
Ah, okay.
it focuses attention on the part that's not in parentheses.
Okay, good. Okay, good point.
Um, so differentiating between short text and long text. Short text provides efficient storage. Long text, the main advantage is that it has no length limit, so I think that's a reasonable thing to put there. Any tweaks, any changes you want to make here? And we agreed to leave out the rich text formatting since it's not a differentiator. Um, so may use more storage and therefore slow searching and sorting. Um, that's kind of long. It's sort of the mirror image of the advantage that short text has efficient storage. Um, do we need to say it at all?
I think to make the implication explicit that it's slow for searching and store and sorting is sort of useful for less technical folks. And
Yeah, I think
therefore I thought makes sense
that
to add.
you're right. Technical users will automatically make the connection between efficient storage and speed and searching, but non-technical users will not. So shall we keep that, but then shorten it and uh, remove the part that's already been said? Maybe slower for searching and sorting, something like that.
Mm.
Usually in these cases, I'm I've learned to ask slower than what.
Then the other options on the page. Again, in context, we're comparing these three options.
But it wouldn't be slower than with summary. I think it would be slightly faster, maybe, than with long text with summary.
So maybe we should make this an advantage of the short text rather than a disadvantage of the long text.
Yeah.
Maybe faster, quicker. I think faster, like so. And I like the idea we had the first time we worked on this table instead of ideal for, but recommended for. Um,
Yeah, recommended for styled longer texts like body without summary.
that's visually a little unbalanced. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 points here and just 2 points here. I mean, it's already visually somewhat unbalanced. It'll be a little more so. Is that worth worrying about?
Mm, I guess we can leave it for now that way. And when it's moved over into the interface, then we can take another look. But for now, I think it's okay.
I
Okay.
think one thing that would be there somewhere, I think it would best fit, I think, to the short text again, making it even more unbalanced. But I think one of the significant differences for beginner is that long text is usually displayed as text area, while short text is input field. So if somebody wants to have 12,000 characters of text and wants it to be efficient, then if they choose short text, they'll end up having trouble with the widgets. So I think that would be useful information to have.
Let me see. I'm not sure. Is that true? If we add I guess I should have stayed where I was. If we do add a short text, maximum length defaults to 255, which is perhaps already enough characters that you'd want to have a text area. And then in the form display, do I not have the option to choose a widget there? You're right, I don't. For a body field, I also don't have an option. Okay, so that's, yeah, I think you're right. That's a good thing to warn people about. Um, so is that something we should add to both, that this uses a one line text field for input? Is that longer than it has to be?
I would move the use a one-line text field for input before the recommended for titles and names.
Okay,
So for the short text.
right. Let me, well, actually, you have the link. You can go ahead and make that change yourself.
True. I'm in the field. A recommendation should always be at the end, at the same place.
Yes. I think there's a proposal to get rid of the long text with summary,
Yep.
but who knows when that will happen. Um, and then if we're proposing to change the labels to remove the word text, we should do that here. Oh no, I removed the wrong word. And actually, I think I'm going to move this down a line. And as a separate field input area, text area. For summary text. Should I go with what's already there? And why am I getting this tiny font? This is 14. I guess I don't like this text. Only difference summary could be added. I prefer this. Do you agree?
Yeah. Maybe to have something like a toggle or like it's kind of optional optional text area for summary because it's kind of initially or it's can be hidden by default.
Right. So, oh, is this even? This must be.
There's no
Where?
summary.
There's no summary. Is the body field no longer a long text with summary? And this is umami. I would be, I guess I'd be more surprised if it were.
In standard, you have body and edit summary.
Yeah. So, oops. Uh, that's right. It doesn't have a summary. All right, so let's just so we can see it.
Thing.
Anyway, it makes a lot of sense because kind of basic pages usually are not displayed as teasers, so that summary is usually for pages that are listed as teasers.
Okay, so here it is. And what do you have to do to have the separate summary? Source text formats.
Like book, like what I'm used. It should have a like next to the label, it should have link to display summary.
Benji, I've posted a link to a standard install.
Thank you.
And just the basic page. Create basic page simply.
Content. I'll edit your existing yet another test. Here we go. And there's the edit summary link. So by default, it's collapsed. So CMO suggests putting in the word optional here as an optional, whoops, separate field for summary text. We don't need to say both optional and separate, do we?
But
Yes?
I'm just thinking how to phrase it. We are already in the long text with summary. So there it isn't optional. Is it more like toggable?
Here I'm thinking from a user perspective, it's optional to fill it, because if you don't fill it, then it's kind of auto-populated.
Okay.
Or not auto-populated, but it's kind of using the fallback. The start of the main text.
Maybe we should combine it with the thing that says uses a text area for input, because we are really talking about how it looks like on the form. With
Yeah, so it could be with optional area for. Actually, it's possible to in the field settings to set summary to be always visible. You don't have to fill it usually. So optional.
oh, I think I hear your voiceover. Is that Ralph or Simo? It's distracting.
Not mine. One question, because as Simo said, if the user doesn't enter anything, then the first X number of characters of the body text is being used as the summary. Should that be added also?
I think so. And I think uses separate areas, text areas for input and summary. And I've changed my mind, and I've decided that the optional aspect is not important, because first of all, as Simo pointed out, you can change the default, either open by default or closed by default. And I think we were text area with summary. Yeah, you have the option of setting that or not. So also, that's not terribly wrong. I wish I could type without typos. And then I got distracted. What was the other comment?
The detail that if nothing is entered into the summary field, then basically the first X number of characters of the body field are being used.
Um, by default. And why am I getting this 10-point type again? Ah,
Yeah, the description says leave blank to use trimmed value of full text as the summary.
where is that?
If you click edit summary,
Yes.
then underneath.
So let's default to a trimmed value version, trimmed value of the main text, the full text. I guess I may as well be consistent.
How about long text? Because we are using here long text, and that way it remains in context.
Capitalized or lowercase?
Good question. I guess lowercase, but I have no strong opinion here.
Now, if neither of us has a strong opinion about it, then maybe it's okay either way.
Yeah. Should it be, we are missing sort of what defaults to a trimmed value of the long text. It's basically the summary and also the detail about if it's left empty, I think is also the constraint.
Well, we're trying to get that across in fewer words just by saying it defaults to. And I guess that's a little bit inaccurate because like we don't have a default value in here generated by this, which is sort of what I'm saying. Um, Instead, when it's displayed, um, it uses the trimmed version if this is empty. Um, is that important to get across? My feeling is that this is close enough, even though it's not completely accurate.
Yeah, otherwise it gets too wordy. Yeah.
And then I think we should say what it's recommended for, and what it's recommended for is content types that will be shown in the list. Recommended for blog posts. Is that too specific for blog posts and articles that will have a listing page that will be listed on a page? I just go with generic content types. And I suppose they could be listed in a block rather than a page. So maybe I should just, that will be shown in the list.
But as a naive user, I would wonder what you mean with in a list. What does list refer to, or what does it stand for here?
List of titles is kind of what comes to my mind at first when somebody says list. So
I'm having trouble.
summaries. I thought.
I'm having trouble with your audio, Simo.
Okay. For me, I think list is first thing that comes to my mind is a list of titles, or kind of a content listing. But then I thought about something like for aggregated content, but that's not really the primary use case either.
So maybe a, a list isn't even the right thing. Like if I open a new tab in Firefox, this isn't necessarily a list. It's the sort of summary text that gets added to these
So
clickbait articles.
I think in modern websites, I think a lot of users would understand if we say cards.
that will be shown. Maybe I should say this. It'll be displayed since we talk about display modes in cards. I mean, shown is shorter, but
But would it make sense to add that the summary is used for cards? So meaning in different view types that you're more flexible.
I don't think you need to say that, do you?
My only worry is, aside the point about the list, that what's the purpose or what's the benefit of having a summary in comparison to just the long text? What is a summary used for? That is what I would ask myself.
Right. And when you're showing a short version of the content in a card, in a listing page, whatever, um, then you either have this separate field for the summary or you generate the summary by trimming the main text, the long text. So
Um, so maybe in your draft here, instead of card, go with the thing you just said, like short version. That will also be displayed in a short version, something like that.
and what do we call that? Oh, this is umami teaser. Teaser is the standard term for that. And where
Is
by
teaser
standard
a
I mean,
Drupalism, or does it exist anywhere else? Is that something that is used?
and that I guess umami decided to break with that Drupalism and use card. Um,
But maybe we should go with teaser, even though it's a Drupalism, I agree. But just for consistency, and then at a later point, if Drupalisms get changed, um, then change it there consistently. But at the moment, in the context of the terminology used in Drupal, teaser might be appropriate.
how about the word summary?
That feels a little bit redundant.
Okay. I'm suggesting that we go with one of the three, either cards or teasers or a summary review. And I'm just writing them all out so we can choose which one we like best.
Yeah, but I mean that summary, because it's long text with summary.
Yeah.
If we say it's intended to be used in lists with
Okay.
summaries.
All right. So either cards or teasers. Let's go with cards. Simo, I think that's your preference, right? Ralph, are you okay with that?
Mm, Problem is, yeah, if you have not umami, then called. Just checking 1 second.
I'd be happy to have a little bit more text and say in cards or T.
Trying to make everyone happy by making the text longer.
Just out of curiosity, 1 second. Yeah, we don't have cards in the standard install profile.
Right? We don't. But it is a commonly used term in among people who build websites.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just move on. Let's move on to the next, I guess.
I was looking at that identical to long text. I think we should use some other word than identical, because if it has differences, then it's not identical.
Uh,
So it's kind of incorporates everything long text has, but it's adds
Yeah.
more. So maybe everything long text does, but
so how do you like the word extends? I guess I'm a PHP developer, so that has a technical meaning to me, but I think it
yeah,
works reasonably well here.
yeah. It kind of reminds me of thinking which is extended memory and which is expanded memory,
Oh no,
going away.
that's a Windowsism, isn't it?
Oh, it's DOS, MS-DOS.
Okay. Okay, shall we move on to numbers? We have a little more than 15 minutes left.
Yeah. Numbers next.
And let's just see it in context. Um, so number without decimals is the current text. And I think we've suggested whole numbers. That's a very familiar term to me. I've uh, I've taught mathematics.
No, we haven't discussed it yet. That was just a suggestion from me. Completely on the left is the column with number without decimals is the current state.
Right. That's what we see here.
Yep.
And these are your suggestions, Ralph.
In Finnish, integer is translated as whole numbers in Finnish, so it would be saying just the same thing. But yeah, the whole numbers would be understandable to anything who understands integer.
Okay. So, so which is more useful? Saying that the values can be positive, negative, or zero, or maybe instead of just one example, give an example of a negative number.
Or zero.
Or we could shorten that to examples. Positive, 0, negative.
Hmm.
I kind of like describe in text, but I think it would be enough to say that values can be negative. So
Okay,
that
so
would kind of,
you prefer these 2 lines?
yeah.
Okay. Ralph, do you agree?
Honestly speaking, I like both alongside, even it is a bit more wordy. Again, we have the disbalance with a number of bullet points. And if I think for numbers, having examples, actual examples is maybe a good thing. And that way, first explain it and then have the examples at the end again.
So you'd like to add a row.
Yeah.
And then if we give examples for integer, we'll presumably also give examples for the other two.
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably just me, but if we say that values can be positive, negative, or 0, and we give examples, I would like to put 0 last.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Ah,
The order should map. I agree.
right. If we were going to have just one or the other, then we could choose the order. But if we're going to have both, then they should definitely match.
Is there any relevance to the maximum of integer? When we had short text and long text, we don't have short hints anymore. But so is it big enough? Do we think?
So let's see. Does it give me any information about that when I actually add the field?
I think just on save, it is something I've noticed with decimal that informed basically my suggestion there, but I suppose it's the same for integer. So if you save something too big, then you get an error.
Huh. Surely I was giving something larger than the maximum integer there. Was I not?
Um,
But anyway, there's currently no mention here of the maximum and minimum integers supported by PHP. There's also no option for an unsigned integer. Um,
I think with, yeah, I just googled, so the first results said look like that with 32 to 32-bit systems, you can have if I got it right, it's 18 zeros in each.
and with
So it's quite
64-bit, so I didn't go large enough.
yeah, it's big.
That should be enough. That still doesn't trigger an error. I don't think there's any.
Could you go in that again and copy your maximum
Oh,
number?
actually, what I said, yeah, I read right. So it's not so big
Ah,
for 32 bits, but for 64, it can have 18 zeros.
okay. So that must be the maximum integer. I entered something ridiculously large and it didn't give me a warning or anything, but it did convert it to the maximum integer that my system supports. Um, but I'm sort of thinking that if this page doesn't say anything about minimum and maximum integers, then maybe we shouldn't um, say anything on on the previous page either. And Simo in the chat pasted in a reference. And yeah, the number there for 64-bit systems is probably the same as this number. Um, and keeping an eye on the time, we have 7 minutes left. Um, and and I suppose both the PHP and the MySQL limits must be relevant here. Um,
I always like the same way they do with the maximum file upload size, so that it tells you what your system maximum is. I like that approach. So it would be nice if we could always get the system maximum if it's somehow relevant. But it's not, maybe not always, not always efficient.
so limits depend on the system or you think we could just drop in um, like so Simo, you're saying you want the help text to include the max int and the minimum integer.
Uh, Maybe not in this case, but it's with the file upload sizes, and in that case, such cases, it's useful because those are usually configured separately, while these are always these are not so often configured manually. or they
So,
are not configured manually, but depend on the system.
so shall we just say,
And I don't want to see.
what's that?
Yeah, I think it can depend. Yeah, that's okay.
So
I
just
think.
say limits depend on the system.
Or minimum and maximum values. Maybe.
I mean, that's 4 words where I had one. Is that really clearer?
Or we could just say maximum values.
We could just say what? Maximum values? Like so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have just a few more minutes left. I guess we're not going to get to the references, which are currently the worst state. But let's at least get started on decimal numbers. Exact numeric data type. You know, from my point of view, integers are exact and decimals are normally just approximations to an actual physical value. Um, let's see, we had examples for whole numbers. We didn't follow the pattern of giving, saying recommended for that we used in text. Um,
Yeah, recommended comes again for decimal and float. There were just no examples for numbers. That that's the reason why I haven't added one.
I guess I feel that the examples line is more useful than the recommended for line for the different types of numbers. Um, of course, that's open to debate. That's just my opinion. But we're now at 1 minute left, so I think we should not try to tackle the next section. Um,
But one thing about recommendation should be used properly. So that's something that a beginner could make a mistake in. So decimal should always be used for prices. Otherwise, we can get in, like they can get into trouble.
I'm sorry, I'm still having
Yeah,
trouble with your audio.
me too.
So maybe you can write that out in Slack, and we are at the time. Um, so thank you for coming. We've made progress here. This is much harder than most people imagine. So thanks for helping with it. And maybe we'll continue with this next week, or maybe we'll take a break and work on some other issue.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thanks. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. And enjoy the release of Drupal CMS. I'm going to a party in Boston.
Have fun. Have fun. Bye
Thanks.
bye.